Hello and welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we are having our monthly check-in with Anthony Lambatos of Footers Catering. How are you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing fantastic. It's always great to be here.
Yes.
Around the holidays. It's a great time of year for us.
We love that you can take an hour-long break to come chat with us because I know this is definitely your busy season.
Well, we're over the hump. I mean, we still have a handful of events this week and next, but our busiest chunk of the season, we're through that, and we're feeling good. We can kind of start taking some deep breaths and gear up for 2019.
Woo! Yes. Exciting stuff. Yeah, so as you said, it's your busy season at the beginning of the month.
Yes. Yeah, first 3 weeks.
Yes, and we have had our award ceremony on December 3rd, so that was earlier this month, of which you guys were winner for the hospitality and lodging category. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. That was a huge honor and unexpected. We were just humbled to be, a finalist and up against two companies and organizations we really respect and think very highly of. So it was an incredible honor, and thank you very much.
Yes, we were excited to do that have you win that award. Again, third party, we had no choice in that. We didn't sway any votes or anything. But it was exciting to see that you guys made it to the finals, and then to see, because they don't ever tell me who the winner is for fear that I'll be interviewing them, and I'm like, yeah, you won, right? So I didn't get a chance to know, but I found out. You were just
as surprised as we were.
I was, and I was all excited, and I actually got to go to a little party in your neck of the woods, which was fun for Mile High Young Professionals.
Yeah, we hosted their holiday happy hour, and they did amazing stuff, raising money, and did a boot drive for Placebridge Academy. A great group of people, in April. Works with them extensively and is actually one of the founding board members of Mile High Young Professionals. So
yes, which is awesome.
It was fun to host that event, and thank you for coming.
Yes, of course. And I get to see you guys in your reindeer outfit, which makes me happy. I might have to attach a picture to the blog post.
You can do that. You can probably find it on our Instagram too. I'm sure it popped up there.
Oh, I'm sure. But I mentioned the awards because your guest today, Kendra Prospero, CEO and founder of Turning the Corner, LLC, also was one of our finalists in the education and workforce development category.
That's right.
Yes, Kendra, I appreciate you being here. You're a guest of Anthony's. You guys have a relationship that goes way back, but small world is what we were talking about before we got on air.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was an honor to be up there as a nominee for that one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
absolutely. One
of those just like, wow, I didn't even know this happened. This is great.
Yeah, it's cool to get an email in the middle of your workday like, what? I've been nominated for an award?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yes, so thank you for coming to the event as well.
Thank you. Also
catered by Footers Catering. It's delicious.
It better be, otherwise I'm in trouble, right?
Exactly. I would tell you. This year I didn't get to eat all the desserts off of everyone's leftover plates.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Anthony, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about what's going on at Footers, your lip sync battle.
Oh, yeah. The lip sync battle is... I am speechless. This was our third year doing this event, and it's kind of our end of the year holiday wrap-up celebration for our team. And we had 21 different performances.
Wow. And
this year we added a new element where we had teams, and we had guest judges. We had audience voting via phones, and it was over the top what our team put together, and the performances. I mean, I think my stomach is still hurting from Monday night because I laughed so hard. The use of props, the use of the production that went into it. It was funny to walk around all day because people had their headphones in, and you could tell they were listening to their songs, trying to get the lyrics right. And there's closets closed where people are rehearsing, and it was really funny. So look out. I'm sure we'll be posting soon a compilation video of that, and next year I've heard it's even going to be bigger and better. So that's the talk of what's going on at Footers. That, and we're been spreading joy. I was talking before the show. We're doing a 30-day challenge where our team members signed up to spread joy at work on a day during the course of the month, and so they've done incredible things for their coworkers, which has been just phenomenal.
That's amazing.
Bringing in donuts and coffee and two of our people brought in rolls of toilet paper and put funny cards on them that said, like, in case you get crap for Christmas. And, just everything people are doing, it was bringing smiles to our faces during some of our busiest times. So it's been a fun thing that's gone on. And it's going to be a record month for us. And I can honestly say that we did it, and it went very smoothly, which is awesome.
That is awesome, and not easy to say in the catering world, for sure.
No. A lot of opportunities for things to not go as planned.
Yes, absolutely.
But let's jump into our conversation. Yeah. As we said, I'm very excited about this conversation because I think it's going to be great, and I'm going to hopefully learn a little bit as well.
Maybe.
So, I'm pretty confident I will. But Kendra Prospero and I are on the board of Colorado Thought Leaders Forum together, and I had a chance to meet her. And from some of the first conversations I had, I was really impressed with her background and her just her approach to not just business, but leadership. And so that's why I am having her come in today to chat with us. And always my theme is around creating a great place to work, but also weaving in that leadership piece, which I think is an integral part. So Kendra, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Oh, good. Okay, well, let's jump right in. You work with so many companies. You've got an amazing background. Let's just right out of the gate, what do you think it takes to create a great place to work?
So I think what you start with is you've got to be really clear on who you really are as a leader. And I think there's what I see a little bit happening in the market is that people sort of create what they think looks great on a wall, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they truly can live themselves. And just like parenting, our kids know exactly when we're not, holding the bag for whatever we've said, right? Well, the same thing happens with leadership. If we're not truly living the values and the mission of the organization, it seeps throughout the entire organization and starts to erode many of the things that, make a culture great, make a company great. So where we often begin is really sitting down to understand, what does that leader really want from their employees? Like, really honestly. I mean, and sometimes it isn't beautiful. It doesn't look beautiful on a wall. But if you're really honest about it, and then you actually tie a recruiting strategy to that, you come up with those interviewing questions that you're really interviewing against, and then you hire, you fire, you manage, you train, you govern, you promote against those values. Now you've created a deliberate culture. And so that's where we like to start, and where we start to, certainly see companies either do really well or not do very well.
So expand on that a little bit, because I think it's a tough challenge as companies grow, right? If it's all based on, one leader and who that leader is and who's driving it, how do you add other people that share in those values, but also bring some diversity to the thinking? To the thinking,
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's challenging. And I think, as a small business or even a medium-sized business, there's not as much wiggle room there on that. The bigger you get, though, the more centralized it's going to be for a team. But I think with small businesses, what you want to do is there's a bit of a debate, and I'm sure I'll create a little bit of controversy here with what I'm about to say.
Let's do it.
I'm going to get edgy. This is HR edgy.
Be the corner that you're turning on.
Right, exactly. No, but I think what happens is that leaders co-create too much in this core thing that's so important. And so I don't want you to not co-create, but where I think it works the best is when you sit down with someone that you care deeply about, or that cares deeply about your organization, or potentially it is an external person who's neutral, and they ask you the question, what do you really need from your employees? And then you ask and then they write down exactly what you say. It's messy, it's ugly, it's full of words that maybe aren't really what you'd be proud to throw on a wall. But then you ask the follow-on question, which is, well, how will you know you have this? What does this look like?
Yeah.
What is the behavior you see out of the employees? What happens when the rubber hits the road, right? And you're going to go a little bit deeper on that, and that's when you really get to the core of what the value is. And so then you take that super messy paragraph, and you'll probably have like 4 to 6 things that you really need from your employees. You have 3 at Footers, right? We have 5 at Turning the Corner of things we need from our employees. Then you go back to your team, and either that's the leadership team if you're a bigger organization, or maybe it's actually the entire organization, depending on your size. And that's where you then co-create. You say, in general, this is what I believe as a leader. they already know it.
Right.
Your team already knows that's what
Yep.
you believe.
Uh-huh.
And so now you whittle it down into something that you feel proud to have on the wall, that you feel like you can really, like, live on a daily basis. But then that's just step one, because then you also then have to say, okay, now what are the interview questions we're going to ask to when we start adding people to the team, so that we know we're getting that at least core value, because you do have to have the core values.
Yes.
You want to bring diversity in other ways, not in the core values.
I couldn't agree more.
Good.
I think that's something that, we going through that process, when we bought the company from my dad, we didn't have a mission. We didn't have core values. Those weren't things that existed. And so it was really, going through a similar exercise where thinking about like, okay, what do we want? What are we doing here at Footers? And I'm very collaborative, sometimes to a fault.
Right. And we
so,
can be, and it can ruin things if you're too collaborative.
Oh yeah. My wife, she's like, can you just make a decision? I'm like, no, I need to ask a few people about it,
Right.
like what they think. It's like, so we balance each other out pretty well there. But yeah, asking people, why do you work at Footers? What sets us apart? And like looking at all that piece of data, all those data points, it was really fascinating because it fit in those three buckets. And it was like, this is what's important.
Yeah.
This is who we're going to be as a company. This is our mission. And then from there, expanding on those values.
Now, I will say where the values do start to change is when you grow. And so, I mean, what I've noticed, and this is certainly not scientific, but this has just been my observation, but it starts to break down at about 30 employees, unless you co-created it at that size.
Okay.
It breaks down again at about 80 employees.
Okay.
And then the other big mark is around like maybe 150 to 200 employees. And beyond that, now your overall values are going to be, they're still really important, but they're more diluted, and it's more important now you actually also define values as a team. Like, what do we really need as a team? And so I see a lot of entrepreneurs, because we work a lot in the startup and kind of scale up market, where they're either really rapidly growing or they want to really rapidly grow, and then the ones that do will hit this spot where suddenly their values aren't being lived anymore, and they feel like, well, you should. But no, what you actually do with those more points is revisit them and probably redefine them on a different level. Because when you start up, you want people who are innovative and entrepreneurial and can quick think and break things, right?
Right.
But when you get bigger, you can't really do that and continue to be profitable, right? Honestly.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to run a nonprofit, that's a different story. But if you want to be profitable, so I mean, a nonprofit that's a for-profit company,
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, you have to kind of revisit those values. You may still have some of the core values, but you have to kind of revisit it and embrace as a leader that your organization's growing, it's changing, and therefore parts of that infrastructure need to grow and change.
That's tremendous advice, and I love those benchmarks. I think people talk about it a lot of times in terms of systems and processes. Okay, this at the $1 million mark and $5 million mark, things have to change. But they forget to talk about the values
people.
And the people.
Oh yeah,
and this is in my opinion more important.
Yes.
Than some of those other things.
Yeah, because money doesn't communicate. People communicate.
Right.
I mean, money has a message, but it doesn't communicate. And so if you don't have these values, and then additionally, you're managing to them, right? When people don't live them,
right.
You talk about that. You have those difficult conversations. We can go into great lengths about that, but you have to talk about that. You have to deal with that. Otherwise, now you're not living those values, and the culture starts to erode. Yep. And so yeah. Anyway,
I think I've told the story before, but we had an employee that we let go way too long in a similar situation where, from a performance standpoint, he was phenomenal, but from an attitude and value standpoint, he was not.
Right.
And we let it go on for way too long, and the message we were sending to our team was, that's okay.
Right.
Like, we say it's not okay, but then it's okay.
Yep.
Because we're not willing to do anything about it.
That's why I say your teams know what your values really are.
It's so true, and it's hard. I mean, when you put your foot in the ground and say, nope, this is really important, and you all of a sudden shift, people pay attention and they look.
We have one of our values at Turning the Corner is no jerks.
Like it.
And what we mean by that and how we live that is no jerks on the team, and then no jerks as clients either. And so,
great.
yeah. And there have been times where, as the leader, I've bumped up against that one, in that I've had clients that, we needed the money, or we wanted the brand, or we wanted something. And it's like, oh, but they're kind of not very nice to their people.
Yes.
My brand is about having people love their job. I can't put candidates in a company who doesn't love their employees, or at least want to like them, right? And I can't work with a job seeker that isn't gonna, that I'm gonna then recommend that company to. And so, but man, I've had that one. I've bumped up against that one where I've had to walk away from lucrative, high exposure deals because I'm like, I just know we can't help these people.
That's phenomenal. We've done the same thing, and for you, it's so important when you're talking about placing people in these companies. For us, I don't want to put our staff in that position to work with somebody that's going to treat them, not in an appropriate manner, not in a way that we feel respected. We understand that we're here, we're servers, we're hospitality people. We understand that's our role, but we want to be looked at as part of making your party a success. Yeah. We don't want to be looked at as the hired help.
Right.
And
as a vendor.
If you're going to view us that way, then we're probably not going to be the best fit for you and the clients that understand and appreciate everything we do to make these events happen. We love working with them. They're awesome, and it's so much better for our team. So kudos to you for doing that, and I'm glad that I'm not the only one that stands up and it says no.
We're not doing that.
Dollars aren't the end all be all here.
Nope.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So speaking of some of those companies that you say, no, we're not going to do that, and I can't in good faith put a candidate into there, what are some of the mistakes you see companies make in the attempt to try to create a great place to work?
Well, I think I have a bee in my bonnet about this.
Okay.
So let me just quickly tell a story, and that I came from IBM. So at IBM, I was very fortunate to be very well trained to become a leader at IBM. At IBM, you say you might want to be a leader, and it's like 5 years of vetting. Let me say it again, 5 years of vetting before you might be considered to become that leader. And so I went through tons of education. I had crazy weird assignments, and all along I was mentored. I was being tested. Didn't know that at the time. Derailed my whole career. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, but I was very well trained. And so then when I opened up Turning the Corner, I kind of came out into the real world, and I was like, well, what do you mean you promoted that person into management? They don't know how to manage. They've never been trained, right? And it's like, oh no, but they're warm and they have a college degree and they did really, really well in their job, so they should be promoted. And then we would get the job. We get the job seekers because we work with both sides of the table. We work with individuals who are on a job hunt, and then we also work with companies. So I was hearing all these stories about individuals that were coming in, and they were like, I hate my job for these. I'm overmanaged. I'm undermanaged. I don't understand the goal. I don't understand the strategy. I hate my team. I hate my manager. The work is too hard. The work is too boring. Life is too hard. These are management issues. Like, those are things, all those things, there's actually 10, but all those things are things that as a manager, you should be able to manage and deal with. And yet those are all the reasons that all these job seekers were coming to me. And it was like, oh, okay, now we have an issue that we need to go fix. We need to get managers trained to handle these things because it is a trained skill. I've worked with thousands of people now, both at IBM as well as here in my business for the last 8 years and my team, and we've never met a born manager. It's a skill. And I think right now, what's to come back to your question, where leaders are, I think, kind of failing a little bit, is they're confusing and elevating leadership and not realizing that's what's equally yoked with leading is managing. If you've got somebody reporting to you, you are managing, and you need to know how to do that. And it's a skill. We've taught now for over 450 managers. We know it can be trained. And so I've got a real big bee in my bonnet about this one, because now that I see how, the difference between the two environments and how impactful it is, we need to fix it. And actually, the other thing that's scary is that Colorado is known as the worst place to work in the country.
Why?
Front Range. Because of this, in my opinion. That's what I think. So many people hate their jobs, and it's those reasons I mentioned earlier. We're not doing the right thing as the small business community to make sure that we're setting people up for success.
And promoting, and so to sum that up, because we're promoting people into positions that they're not trained to do,
right,
that we're setting them up for failure.
Well, yeah, because I think this is another key point. I don't know if we all realize how important our role is as a manager. You are like the second most important person to everyone on your team. the first is probably their spouse, but you are like the second most important person in their life. We got to treat that with, gently. We've got to treat it like, an analogy I often use is like an egg. You can push on certain parts of an egg and it doesn't break. But if you don't know how to manage, you don't know what parts to push, and you push the wrong parts, and you break people. And so, yes, I think we definitely need to kind of figure out how to solve this problem a little bit more here in Colorado.
So what are those 10 things? Do you want to go into those?
I could.
The 10 things. I think this is fascinating.
Yeah.
And we focus on what are those 10 things that managers need to know how to do.
Well, they need to know what management style to use when.
Okay.
So a majority of new managers are either micromanagers or completely hands-off. I call them a seagull manager, where they come in and they swoop in and then they kind of poop on everything, and then they like say, "Good luck cleaning that mess up." And so yeah, those are the two most common new manager styles and the two most hated styles. Do you like working for a micromanager?
No.
No. Do you like working for a micromanager?
I probably shouldn't say that, but no, I don't.
No, nobody does. I've never met anybody that does. And so, but so you have to know what style to use when. There is a time for it, but it's not very often. The second big skill you need to know how to do is manage your emotions at work and manage your team's emotions. So, this is sort of tied into EQ and what we're seeing, and luckily a great trend in EQ, which is, by the way, one of my favorite books, is Emotional Intelligence 2.0. But really understanding, like, why is that triggering people? Why is that triggering me? And what's the intent? And then the third big thing to learn is then how do you have skillful, or I'm calling it more dignified, conversations? Nobody should be going off at people at work unless people are gonna die. Or creatures. If creatures are gonna die, because we work with like zoos and things like that. So creatures and people, if they're gonna die, you can yell and scream, but otherwise there's no reason for it.
Yeah.
And so how do you have that dignified conversation? And then also, how do you then set goals that are realistic but not micromanaging, and then keep people on track for those goals? So a lot of people think, well, I don't want to micromanage my people, so I don't want to tell them what to do. Well, all people need a little bit of clarity, except for leaders, clarity around what needs to be done. And so, you and I might set a goal of like, we want to increase revenue in 2019. We'll increase revenue by $1 or by $1 million. Like, we've got to be specific about that, and then tie that into goals that each person has a contribution to.
Yep.
And then the last big piece of it is, of course, hiring. And so hiring to me is not just recruiting. Recruiting is like super easy. Matter of fact, IBM did an amazing job recruiting me, but they completely failed in onboarding, which is the second part of hiring. You cannot, if you're not doing both, you're not doing it right. And a lot of people are really failing on the onboarding side. And so onboarding isn't just like, here's your benefits, here's your badge, here's your key, good luck.
Go.
Yeah, it's like a whole 90-day plan. What's day one? What's week one? What's month one? What's the first 3 months? And then how do we stay on track for that for the whole year?
That's awesome. Love that. And this is all things that you work with individuals to help them get those skills, and companies to help train their people.
Yes, in 2015, I took my management training I had from IBM, and I'd been in business at that point for 4 years, so I could kind of see what would work in the small business market. I took this Fortune 100 training, and I turned it into something that is priced and timed for small businesses. And so now it's a mission maker for me.
That's awesome.
It's not a money maker.
We're going to get into that a little bit into the next segment.
Great.
Yes, absolutely. I'm having a fascinating conversation here with Anthony Lambatos of Footers Catering and Kendra Prospero of Turning the Corner. So we're going to take a quick break here on Connect and Collaborate. Be sure to like and subscribe our YouTube page while you're here. And go ahead and find this podcast and more at cobrt.com/radio-podcast. Look up Anthony Lambatos or Footers Catering for all of our past shows. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Once again, I'm Alex Hopkins, your on-air producer, and we're having our monthly check-in here with Anthony Lambatos of Footers Catering. Always a pleasure to have you in studio.
It's always fun to be here. Thank you, Alex.
Yes, and you always bring me such great people. And we have Kendra Prospero, CEO and founder of Turning the Corner, and we're getting some great inside information on how to be a leader and a manager and how to not confuse those terms, which a lot of people do.
Yes.
And tools, this is one of the fascinating things that Kendra highlighted in that first segment, and we've been guilty of it at times too, where you promote people because they're good workers and they have some of the skills that you think they'll need to be able to do that job, but we don't really give them the training they need to manage people, and it's probably the single most important thing that they do on any given day, especially at companies that value their people and really care about making sure that they're creating that great place to work.
Yep.
So this is a phenomenal conversation. We're going to jump back in here. You mentioned this for you personally is a mission maker. This is something, I could just see it in your face when we started talking about this, that you lit up and something that you are truly passionate about. And I know, your website talks about helping people find, dream jobs and jobs they love. And now it makes even more sense that it's not just saying, okay, you'd be a good fit here, putting them in this job. It's saying, I'm going to prepare you to help make sure that once you're there, you're going to thrive. Or if you're already there, I'm going to give you those tools to be successful. So I think that's phenomenal.
Good. Thank you.
I want to hear more from you, though, in terms of why you're so passionate about this.
Well, I honestly think I was kind of born with this. I did not know this about myself, but a couple years ago, so I've been doing this now for 8 years with Turning the Corner, or almost 8 years. And a couple years ago, my parents, who are often quite flabbergasted by my choices, and then surprised when they actually turn out, as we do as parents, right? But they told me a story of when I was about maybe 4 or 5 years old, and they had a dinner party, and I walked up to my parents' friends, and I said, so what do you do? Why do you do it? I mean, I'm like this little itty bitty kid. And then I'd say, like, why would you do something that you hate, right? And then I'd kind of get scooted out of the room. Why they didn't ever tie that back together, because I was actually like a performer. I was a classically trained pianist. I was going to go down the music route. And then I got to college and I realized I really wasn't that good at that stuff, and I wasn't going to probably make it, and I didn't want to wait tables the rest of my life. So I dropped my music scholarship and wandered around the campus to try to figure out what was next. And at the time, computers were just hitting the market. I had just seen the internet for the first time, and I thought, well, I know nothing about this stuff. If I'm going to pay all this money for school, because now I don't have a scholarship, I might as well learn something I know nothing about. So I went and got a college or a computer information systems degree. I mean, I didn't even go down the path then. So, but then at IBM, I was always so curious about the work people did. Well, why are you doing this? What's your passion? What are you wired for? And I just started to create this picture and this huge database in my brain of so many jobs, what makes people great at it or not. And so then 2011, a friend of mine said, go do this thing, like quit the programming thing. Go do this job stuff that you love. And so that was my business plan. Basically, really smart. But within a day I had clients, and within a year I'd already hit 6 figures. And so as a solopreneur, and now I have this great team of people that are so behind and passionate about it as well. And so now we just eat and breathe and live this on a daily basis, and realize like that we are just all so connected into this idea of, ending suffering at work.
I love that. End suffering in the workplace.
Yeah.
That's something that you can get behind.
Yeah. And I think I'll do this now the rest of my life. I mean, I just love it.
Yeah.
It's what I read about it. I mean, there's nothing I haven't heard yet.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. And so, we talked about some of the, you were highlighting on some of the management and the training. Talk us through some more of the logistics of somebody going through that program, and when it's right for them to go through that and what they come out with.
So I created the program based on what I had learned at IBM. And which is Fortune 100, training. I mean, I have a, phenomenally trained, from these, this incredible organization. And I still had all the books, and I went back through the books and I said, okay, what's relevant in the small business market now? Because I'd been in my business for 3 or 4 years at that point. So I could, came from corporate America, but I could see the small business world, or was living it. And so I just took the best parts out of that IBM training in a way, and then I modernized it because it was old at that point. It was, probably 2002, 2003. So I then went and, brought in the EQ, brought in some of the things that have been more modernized in terms of just what we've learned recently about the way the brain works and the way the brain needs to be led, and the mission-driven organization, and pulled all of that into it. And then I thought, okay, well, no small business can afford to send people for 3 or 4 days to an offsite. Like, that's just, I know for me at Turning the Corner, I have 3 managers. Like, there's no way I could do that. So, okay, so it needs to be divided up. So we made it 2 hours every other week. We teach one skill in that 2-hour class. There's no fluff. It's like, you're going to learn this thing. We're going to practice it one time, and then you're going to go practice it every single day as a manager. And we're going to coach you in between. So if people on staff to take on-demand calls. Then it's a 12-week program. So they learn each of these skills over the course of 12 weeks. And then they basically graduate. And then we have kind of ongoing support we can offer, in terms of additional training outside of that, those 6 skills or 5 skills I mentioned earlier. And then I really looked at the price. And so, competition or, a lot of these are priced really expensive. I mean, some of them are between $7,000 to $10,000 for that 2 or 3 or 4 day offsite. Yeah. Well, there's no way Turning the Corner could afford that. And so
you're looking at your own business.
Yeah.
So, well, why the soft spot for small business though?
Because nobody's training in small business. There's nothing that we can afford, right, in small business. I mean, corporate America can afford a $7,000 training to send down to CCL, Colorado Center for Creative Leadership in Colorado Springs. We can't afford that. So the small business market is just completely neglected. Yeah, so that's really was the main reason. And all the job seekers we were getting are from the small business community. And unfortunately also the large business community too, but for different reasons usually than poor management. Yeah.
And I love that, during the break you were talking about the results that you've seen.
Yeah.
Where, people who've gone through your program 2-3 years later coming back and still remembering what they learned.
Yeah, which was, that doesn't happen in adult learning ever. So yeah, all of a sudden I was like, oh, maybe I'm on to something really good here, or we're on to something really good here. So, if I can be really vulnerable for a minute, running a business is, of course, as you know, not for the faint of heart. It's super hard.
It looks glamorous from the outside, right?
Yeah. We've had some dark, dark days. And in April of this year, I was like, you know what, this program, it was just super hard to sell. I was struggling every single time we'd run a cohort. We run them about once a quarter out of our own office, or we run them, remotely. And I just was struggling to fill the seats. And I said, forget it, I'm just going to cancel the whole program. And that's when we realized, and then the next day we started getting calls about it. It's like, well, maybe we won't cancel it. But that's when we realized we had it priced too high. And so we significantly dropped the price so that it fits in the small business market again. And now it's really taking off. But yeah, it's not been an easy journey to try to figure it all out. But I think we're now at this kind of sweet spot to serve the right people with it.
Well, and I think that's cool that you were able to use those business, ideals and say, okay, we have a great product and we're not selling it to the right person at the right price. And so if we're going to shift that around, what does that need to look like? And you figured out a way that you can now function as a business and still do something that you're extremely passionate about in helping these small businesses and so many managers.
Yep.
But let's talk a little bit more about hiring. I know that's another piece of what you do. And hiring, I've found, I've definitely gone through my lumps on making some bad hiring decisions. Give us a couple of tips and highlights of the most important things. We talked about the values, maybe how you make sure you're interviewing for values or looking for those. And then anything else that you can expand on when going through that process of hiring a new employee.
So I actually want to kind of reverse it just a little bit.
Go for it.
I want to start with actually what makes someone love a job, because we know that. We know that really deeply, what makes someone love a job. And it's a combination of 3 things. It's that they're doing what they're hardwired to do. Okay, so I told you guys earlier that I was a software engineer for IBM. Now, Anthony, you know me pretty well. Alex, you kind of know me, but do you really think I was wired to be a software engineer?
No.
Yes, you can see it, right? You can see it from a distance. And so you first and foremost want someone, you want to make sure that they're doing what they're hardwired to do. And hardwiring is a combination of their personality and their skills. And so, now I could say, I'm skilled as like a presenter, right? And I have the personality for it as well. Or I'm skilled as a leader and I have the personality for it. I had the skills, skill to do programming, but I didn't have the personality for it. And so I kind of sucked at it, honestly. I was actually really bad at it. and so that's the first thing, is you want them to, be hardwired for it. But then the second thing is you want to make sure that they're getting what they need out of the job. And that's where we have this alignment often of their values. And so a great interview question, one of my favorite interview questions that I ask both for Turning the Corner when we're hiring, as well as for the companies that we're doing recruiting for, is what do you need from a job? What do you need from a job? I mentioned this earlier.
How many people know that, though?
I don't know that I could answer that.
Well, here's who know it. People who are who have been around the block a little bit. They're going to be a bit more mid-career. College students do not know this.
Okay.
And they shouldn't know it. And matter of fact, if you're listening and you're in college, your job isn't, you don't need to get a job that you love. You need to get experience, because you'll figure out what you end up really loving then. And so sometimes we just know. So there's a rare group of people that just know that they're going to do something, and they're famous usually, and so then everybody thinks that's how life is supposed to go. but most people who are mid-career and beyond will know what they really need from the job. And everybody has about 4 to 6 things. You have your 4 to 6, you have yours, I have mine, but they're all a little bit different. And so the question that you then want to follow on with is then, how will you know you have this? And that's when you as the leader are listening for, as the manager, listening for alignment. If they say they need flexibility, well, how do you know you have this? Well, it means that I can set my own schedule. Well, that's not going to work at Footers, right? You know that internally. There might be some flexibility, like some days you can come in a little bit later, but we got to
Mondays I want to work from home is a different answer.
Yeah.
But
right.
if you don't ask that probing question,
you won't know.
Flexibility can mean so many different things. Yeah.
Exactly. So then that's kind of the second big thing, is making sure that you understand what they really need from their job. What are their values? This is, by the way, also a great management technique. Ask your employees, what do they need from a job? Are they getting it or not? Because oftentimes disengagement comes from people not getting what they really need from a job. Or the work being just too hard because they're not good at it, right? Yeah. And then the final then piece is, of course, the sort of, I don't know the right word for it, but it's like the hygiene of the job, the lifestyle fit, right? Is it are they getting the right salary? Is the commute decent? Are they getting the benefits they need? Sometimes it ties into the values specifically, but oftentimes it's like these additional things. If you've got someone that you need to be in Fort Collins, serving the Fort Collins community, and they live in South Denver, like, I promise you, it's not going to last.
Right.
They'll make it work for 6 months, maybe 9 months, but they will hit a breaking point on that, unless they come from LA. And then they can handle that. Like, that's nothing. 2.5 hours.
No problem driving.
right. So, yeah.
That's good. Okay. I love that. I'm going to take that back. And for any Footers team members listening, you get ready for what do you need from a job. We're going back and making sure we know that for all of our team. I love that. I think it's really important. I hope I know that, but I think it's good for me to challenge and see if I'm on the right track.
Well, and you'll find that some people are like, well, I need to grow. Well, what does that mean? How do you know you have this? It means I'm constantly learning. Well, how are you getting that here? Like, tell me where you're finding that, right? Those are we don't call them exit interviews. Those are the stay interviews. Those are the questions to say, wait, what makes you stay?
Yes. Isn't that amazing? We wait until somebody leaves to do those interviews, and really so many of those questions could be asked in advance. I mean, even something as I've talked to a number of business people, being able to ask an employee, hey, what would make you leave this job? Like, most people don't have the guts to ask somebody that, but it's invaluable, and it gives you an incredible depth and insight into what they're thinking. And it's like, oh, I can fix that. I can make sure that never happens. Or it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And if we get to that point, like, I'm happy to help you get onto that next path in your career.
Right. Yep. And I think there's a lot of fear around having those conversations as leaders. You're afraid of the answers. And so the other analogy I like to give to leaders, and it just hits home. And so, do you have a dog? Let me ask you a quick question. You don't? Okay, but you know what dogs like do, they poop and stuff, right?
Right.
Okay, so if you had a backyard and you had a dog in the backyard and they poop in the backyard, you kind of go clean it up as you go. Maybe you do it like once a day or once a week, but if you left it for a long time, it's going to be a mess back there, right? Well, that's what happens with deal with these conversations. It's the same thing. It just keeps building up. And or even like if you have a little pile of poop over here and a little one over there and a little one over there, that's not that bad, but you pull that whole thing together, that's a lot of poop, right? And so and so you have to do so every time you want to you're afraid to have a difficult conversation, treat it like, I got to go clean that up. You know, it's just going to get worse, because it is just going to get worse. And this is a perfect example. We might be afraid to ask that question. What do you need from a job? And afraid that we're not going to serve our employees. But oftentimes it actually is, it's a great process of feeling proud of what what we can create together.
Well, and I think that's one trait that you have to have as a leader, right? Because as an employee, I probably don't have the gall to sit you down and say, listen, I'm having an issue here. I probably need you to approach me as a leader and say, is everything still okay? Are you still happy? Are you still getting what you need?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're totally right. I mean, there's definitely a power issue there. And if you don't ask it as a leader, you're going to find it in other ways. Then that you'll have turnover, you'll have morale issues, you won't be hitting goals, you'll be having other things that are kind of like lagging indicators that you haven't asked the difficult questions and dealt with it.
And been able to create an environment where team members feel comfortable expressing some of those things when they are frustrated or things aren't going well. That's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit at Footers, and I'm big on, there's no personal Anthony and professional Anthony. Like, I'm one person, and I don't walk in the door and be like, okay, professional Anthony's here now. Like, everybody has stuff going on, and if stuff's not going right at home, it's going to impact work, and if stuff's not going well at work, it's going to impact at home. So we have to be able to have conversations with a person as a whole and treat them as such, in order for them to feel confident in coming to work and being able to talk about those things.
Yes, definitely. But I think you're a unique leader. I'll tell you that. I mean, and it's also an amazing compliment, because I rarely actually get to like geek out about this stuff that I do every day with a fellow leader. Most of the time I'm coming in, I'm like, oh, you did that. Oh, okay, you shouldn't have done that. Right? I'm not, normally I feel like I'm like the grown up in the room a lot of the times. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I just mean I'm a well-trained leader and manager. And so I expect to be able to be pretty good at this. But, most people are just not willing to have those conversations and really be open, because we all have our own insecurities and vulnerabilities, and it's a challenging thing to really ask those deep questions and then listen deeply.
You're spot on, because there was an article, it was a CoBiz magazine, and it was suggesting how to ask your employer for a mental health day.
Yeah.
And I read the headline.
You're like, really?
And the first thing I thought was, don't you just ask? Like,
nope.
And then I realized, I was like, no, that's probably why they wrote the article. Like, most people, this is a struggle, because most bosses probably don't understand that and aren't receptive to it. And I think that's a scary thing right now, with, generations of who's in the workplace, and the emphasis that we right now have on mental illness, and not being receptive to that, I think, is a very dangerous place for business in general to be in.
Yes, and nobody is winning in that kind of environment. Customers don't win when we do that to our employees, and teams don't win. We don't win as leaders. Yeah. Like, nobody wins when we have an environment like that. And so, if you could kind of switch gears a little, or switch your mindset a little bit to say, okay, who's really benefiting from this intense environment? And if you can name somebody who's truly benefiting, then it's probably worthy to really think about that, and maybe turn into a value. Like, we have an intense environment,
right?
Right? We're going to hire people who like 80-hour work weeks. Right? Let's be honest. But most of the time, nobody's benefiting from that, kind of crummy environment, or those crummy work work hours. Yeah. Long term.
Yeah, that's a whole nother, Elon Musk's recent article about, you have to work, 80 hours a week to change the world, or something like that. And, I mean, that's one train of thought. And then on the other side, you got people that are promoting how important it is to have that balance in your life, and that the work you do is so much more rich and valuable when you take time away and come to work. And we definitely are much more on that side of things. We have times where we have to work a lot of hours in a given week to make sure we get everything done. But but we're big on you got to get away for a little bit to really appreciate and come back and be your best self.
Yep, and recharge.
Exactly.
Yeah, I absolutely do not agree with Elon Musk. Is he a sponsor?
Yes. No, he's not. You could easily get 2 people to work 40-hour work weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, and make that difference of working that one 80-hour work week.
Yeah.
That's something we talked a lot about at Footers of if we're going to create some balance and make this easier for everybody, we're all willing to, that's something that's important to us. And so how are we going to build the infrastructure to be able to support that? But not everybody agrees. That's why it's good conversation, right?
Exactly.
But anything else on hiring? I mean, I know that's something that you work quite extensively with both companies and on people that are seeking new jobs. But any other insights from you on that?
Well, I think the other probably big thing that a lot of leaders don't do is realizing that it's actually really positive to have somebody come in where they bring about 80% of the skill to the job, and that there's a stretch assignment. People actually are better workers when they're kind of challenged and stretched a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. And so, I often, I mean, and I would also say that on the flip side too, there's nothing wrong with having someone on your team that's overqualified. Like, I kind of want an overqualified doctor,
Right?
Don't you? And so as long as their values are being met and what their lifestyle needs are being met, like you're actually going to be in a better place when you have someone who's overqualified to join that team. So just kind of think a little bit differently about the bulleted list that you think you need to be checking off to really find that great hire, because sometimes a stretch assignment can be an amazing, really highly engaged employee, and sometimes even somebody who's really overqualified can be an amazing employee because for whatever reason, their last assignment was too much for them.
Right. And you go back to this hygiene piece of it, which I love, and thinking, too many times we see that, and I hear this all the time, where you don't hire somebody because they're overqualified because you're worried you can't afford them.
Right.
Or why would they were making, 1.5 times this what I'm going to pay. That may not be important to them at this point in their life. They're at a new spot where something else is important, making a difference, working in a small business. But I've seen a lot of companies just disregard candidates because they're like, oh, salary range is too high.
Yeah, you don't know that.
Yeah.
You don't know that at all.
So probably a dumb question here. I do hear overqualified a lot, and I guess I don't know the exact definition of that. I never equated it to salary. So that's new. It's something
In my opinion, I've seen that thrown around to disguise, we don't want to pay you that much.
Okay, which is fair.
Maybe I'm wrong there.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Yeah, a lot of times that's one of the things that people will think is they're overqualified, so they're going to be too expensive, right? Or they'll just think like, well, they're going to be bored in the job. Well, you got to ask.
Right.
Ask those questions. What do you need from a job? Well, I need to be challenged. Why do you think you're going to get that here? So, yeah, it just, I think it's something you have to just be thoughtful of, being overqualified or underqualified for a job. So, and then I think the very last piece I'd add on to hiring is don't forget to onboard. Onboard. So you have a brand new employee that joins your team. Their ability is low. Their confidence is low. You have to then train them, teach them. You've got to get them to a place where their ability starts to get higher, but you know that they still can't totally do the job. So you continue with that training. And then you can get to a place where now you'll actually see their confidence kind of drop because now they know what they don't know. And you know they can do it though because you've been working with them. And so now that's when you coach. You have a coaching program. You sit down with them one-on-one and say, no, I know you can do this. I saw you do it.
Yes.
And then your ability is high, their confidence is high, and now you can be hands-off as a manager. That's kind of those management styles, but you tie that to an onboarding program. That doesn't happen in one day.
Yes. 1 minute. Those first 90 days are so fragile and leave such a huge impression. And if you don't get a second chance to fix that, that's great advice. I wholeheartedly believe in making sure that somebody's onboarded right and feels good about what they're doing.
Kendra, where can we find more information?
So you can go to turningthecornerllc.com, or you can even just reach out to me directly. Probably the easiest way is hello@turningthecornerllc.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been a stellar conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
Can we do it again?
Yeah.
You know what?
Thank you, Kendra.
Yes.
Thank you, Alex.
2019, we'll get you back in here.
I'm in.
Thank you both so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. And have a wonderful day out there. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Yes.